You seem to have worked wonders with Benjamin Sesko in 48 hours. Just how much potential do you see in this squad? Obviously, it's been quite a tough season so far. How much potential do you see, and for you or the next person coming along, how much can they draw from this kind of squad of players now?
Well, first of all, I think Ben, he's the one who crosses the white line. He'd done it for himself. So let's look, we showed some video, but Ben's been working really, really hard. He's a diligent lad. He trains well. He reviews his games meticulously. So he's been striving for that moment. I'm just fortunate that it came in the game that I was taking charge of. So I'm more than happy for him. There's lots of potential in this squad, and I think potential is a good word, because you can see some young players who are learning their trade and developing at Manchester United under the biggest microscope, under the most intense pressure. So within that, they'll have to learn quickly, but they'll have to develop a thick skin and deal with the pressures that come with that. But I said it the other day, that's Manchester United, and as quickly as they can learn to deal with that, accept that, we have to help them. Experienced players have to help them, coaches, staff have to help them, managers have to help them, everyone in the club has to help them. The biggest thing for me is the fan support, that's there on the pitch, understanding of these things, but I can't question any of that, because the fans away from home the other night and in the home stadium, I think they've been fantastic with the players. So if you take it in isolation on match day, I think the players are in a good environment to improve and to learn and to keep developing.
Samuel and then Stephen.
Hi Darren. I don't know if you remember saying this, but after Jose was sacked and I came in, you said the club risked writing off the season by hiring a caretaker. Now, I'm not expecting you to say that's going to be the case here and you're entitled to change your mind, but do you think that there needs to be some clarity on who's going to be in charge for the rest of the season sooner rather than later?
It's good research, that. I was young and naive when I said that, wasn't I? No, that was my feeling at the time. And I was thinking, I was speaking in context of probably being out of the game and not involved in it from the inside. I think the most important thing for me is it's not my decision, and ultimately the club need to do what they think's best. The people in the higher up in the roles in the club, they need to do what they think's best. They need to know what their plan is going forward for the success of Manchester United, and I'm sure they'll do that. I think that they'll be strong enough to think to accept and to deal with that pressure and to make the right decision for what's best for them and for what Manchester United is just now.
Hi Darren, I'm reluctant to ask about a 15-year-old in a press conference, but you've worked closely, you can tell by your smile on your face, I'm going to ask about JJ Gabriel, his wonderful talent. Could you provide some insight into him as a player and working with him with the under-18s? And could he possibly be in the squad this weekend? I know the rules state that he could be involved in the FA Cup at just 15.
Well, he could be, but he's not going to be, because obviously anybody could be picked. But JJ's a fantastic talent. I've enjoyed working with him immensely, getting to know him. He's a young lad with a massive sort of hype. There's a lot of noise around him, and deservedly so, because he's a real talented kid. He works hard. He loves football. First thing I'd say is he loves football. He loves training. He loves playing. He loves having the ball. He loves expressing himself. He makes fantastic decisions. He's just got an enthusiasm for the game that's just amazing. 15-year-old, a bright future ahead of him. I'm super excited by his talent, but the most important thing that he keeps developing, and he's in the under-18s team and he's doing fantastically well, but he's still got lots to learn. He's developing within there, but the world's his oyster and he just needs to go on his journey, and his time will come in due course. But for just now, it's a little bit early, I think, and I think a lot of people would agree with me. But I couldn't speak highly enough of JJ. He's got an amazing family and amazing support around him, and he's somebody we're delighted to have at the club, and we just hope he keeps improving, learning every day, and just keep being the boy that he is, really, and enjoying, loving playing football and going and expressing himself and scoring lots of goals so the Manchester United under-18s win every game, and then I'll be a happy man.
Jay.
Hi Darren, you've previously been technical director here. You're working in the academy, you've been here 5 years, I believe.
Yeah.
So you're not sort of surprised basically you're not the obvious choice to be the interim, because after all, isn't that why you're here, to sort of learn about the club, the club inside out? Are you not surprised that actually, they've not come to you and said, please do it for the rest of the season at least?
No, I was surprised I got offered for the 2 games, because I wasn't expecting it. I don't think like that. I think about the job that I've got in hand, I really do. So it wasn't something that was on my radar at all, but when I do get asked to do it, I know that I can do it. I know that I'm comfortable doing it, I know the environment. I believe in myself. I feel like I've learned a lot in the 5 years that I've been here. I've had great experiences as a player. I've took my time to develop and learn as a coach and other parts of things off the field, which I'm glad I've done, because I think it's put me in a great position now, or a better position now than I would have been 5 years ago. So I've had 5 years of learning under good coaches and good people. And as I said, I feel like I've developed a rounded approach to the game and football, and comfortable in a lot of different situations, academy, technical, or obviously coaching and leading.
Exactly, so that's what I'm saying. You seem the obvious choice.
Maybe I appreciate you saying that. But honestly, it's 2 games. I'm the obvious choice for these 2 games, hopefully, and thankfully, an amazing opportunity. But that's all my focus and energy is going on just now. Anything beyond that is out of my control.
Last question for Rob.
Hi Darren, can I just ask you how you found this experience, because it's such an all-consuming job? I mean, has it made you think that in the future you would like to be a permanent number one, further down the line, or are you sort of desperate to get back to the under-18s where the sort of the spotlight and the pressure's maybe a little bit less?
I've always been quite relaxed about my future. I've enjoyed it. I really have. I've enjoyed the challenge of it. It's amazing. I've tried to relish it. I've tried to go with my instincts. As I said, I think I'm quite well prepared. And I've always tried to prepare myself to be a manager in the future. It's something I always thought that I would maybe be quite good at, or something I'd enjoy doing or enjoy the challenge of. But at the same time, I wanted to be really careful and make sure I was ready for that if that moment came. But it's not something I'm saying I'm like desperate to do. I think the circumstances in life dictate that, where you're at yourself personally, health, family, lots of different factors dictate that. As I said, I've got 2 young boys on the start of their footballing career, where that takes them. I've got another set of young twin girls, which takes up a lot of my time. So then things are on my mind really, and I've experienced how intense it has been a manager for less than a week. So it's there's not much time for much outside the family life and things outside the football. So I want to prepare myself to be a manager, and that opportunity might come for me one day, and I know I'll be ready to do it. But if it doesn't, I'll be more than comfortable with that. And if it remains staying as the under-18s coach, I'm really happy and enjoy doing that, and I'm going to help develop players for Manchester United.
Thanks everyone.
Cheers guys, thank you.
Let's examine Ineos a little bit here, because the 1958 supporters group have not exactly been backward in coming forwards in what they've had to say about Ineos in the recent days. Just to quote you some lines, this is what they said and their spokesman said in the last few days. They said United has become a toxic partnership between the Ineos billionaire and the Glazers. The director of football, Jason Wilcox, and the chief executive, Omar Barada, were learning on the job, they said, and should go. And they say this: after lurching from one disaster to another, Radcliffe comes across as an incompetent clown turning the club into a circus. Is there an argument, Merce, that since Ineos came in, United as a whole have gone backwards?
Yeah, I would probably say so. I mean, to call a man a clown who's a multi-billionaire is a bit strong, in my opinion.
But they're looking at what he's done to United.
Yeah,
They're not worried about what he's done elsewhere.
Yeah, I think what's happened, he's come in and thought with the jobs he's done at other businesses, he can go and do that at Man United. First of all, he got behind the 8 ball, sacking people from behind the ground who are on, not a lot of money, that are not going to really affect, and then pack lunches or whatever, and still giving players free 350 grand a week who are not playing. I think he got all that wrong. Yeah, I just think, and he brought the man in, the cycler.
Dave Brailsford.
Yeah, he brought
cycling man, as he used to refer to him as.
Sir Dave. Yeah, Sir David. Yeah, but he's a cycling man. It's like, it's like me going in somewhere after I finish playing and go, do us a favour, you come into Surrey Cricket Club and try
or do some paddle training
and try and win us the championship, win us the county championship. You know what I mean? Like to say, oh, you've done really well at football.
Well, it's like Sir Clive Woodward at Southampton.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It doesn't work. So, yeah, I understand Man United and I understand their fans, and he probably, if he could do it all over again, like there's a lot of things in life, everybody around the world, if you could do it again, you'd probably change it differently. But at the same time, this is not last year and 2 years and 3 years. We're talking 20 years now, Man United. It's not like 5 years ago, 6 years ago. It's constant. We still live in this thing of Man United, of like a Ronaldo at his pomp, and Roy Keane and Rio Ferdinand and Vidic and Paul Scholes
and Rooney
and Chelsea's and Rooney, and that gone.
Yeah.
It's gone. A long time gone. Start now and just try and get back to a little bit. They think now, because it's Man United, they're going to just fly up and win the Premier League. It's got to be done slowly, but they've got to get things right. Can't keep on sacking managers. But they knew this manager played free at the back. And I sat on here a long time ago and said, Chelsea suited Amorim better than Man United did. So they knew when he come that he played free at the back.
And
they
must have looked rigid to that as well.
Yeah, and they must have known at the time that they didn't have the players to free at the back. So then you go, we don't take you. You know, so for me, there's a lot to be done, but I think there's a lot of people still living in that 20-odd years ago time of Man United, and that's long gone.
Just talking more about Ineos, Sue, because one of their strap lines in terms of a business is the best in class when it comes to decision making. Well, let's examine some of their decisions then. We mentioned already Eric Ten Hag gets that FA Cup win. There were all kinds of reports ahead of that game that he was going to face the sack. They kept him on, gave him a shed load of money to spend in the summer. Then he goes. They bring in Dan Ashworth. He goes. They now bring in Ruben Amorim. They chased him down hard. They prized him away from Sporting Lisbon. He didn't want to go at that stage of the season. And now he's gone as well. It just feels, decision making wise, they're a long way from the best in class. Do you trust them to make the right decision long term going forward now for United?
Well, at the moment, you'd have to say no, wouldn't you? And I think a lot of fans are feeling that as well. Will they make the right decision? Because when you look back at all of the decisions that they've made, or a lot of the decisions that they've made, it hasn't been a success. It hasn't worked. You know, you asked before who's to blame. You've got to say it's collective, isn't it? Of course, the manager's got to take some of the blame, you know, some of his decisions, his tactics and things like that. But when you look at the bigger picture, since, you know, Ineos, Sir Jim Ratcliffe have come in, a lot of the decisions and a lot of the things that he's done has been criticised, and rightly so. That the Ten Hag thing, it looked like he was going to go, didn't it? Like you said, it looked like they were interviewing other managers, or the managers were going to come in. Then they decided to back him. Then they decided to give him loads of money where he brought in players, and then they decided to sack him. So it just seemed like a real sort of waste of money. Obviously, a similar sort of things happened with Amorim, and I know he came out and said things. I don't think they expected to sack him so soon. So at this moment in time, you've got to say you would question the decision and if the decision was right, and you just feel that this next decision has to be right. So the interim manager has to be right, because I think you've got to try and get Manchester United into a good position, whether that's Champions League, whether that's European football, because the manager that potentially could come in the summer, he's then going to want to get the best players, and the best players will only come if they're playing Champions League football. So they have to get it right now. They've then got to get it right in the summer, because there's been so many decisions in the past and previous that we've gone, I'm not sure about that.
And he's also, whoever it is who comes indoors, particularly long-term, come the summer, they're going to have to deal with that dynamic that Amorim struggled with in terms of Jason Wilcox. Now, we know as a player, decent. You know, he won the Premier League with Blackburn. There are question marks over him, though, in terms of his role at Manchester United. I mean, there was a Q&A he did at Old Trafford. They didn't know it was being filmed. It ended up being filmed, and it was released to the wider public. But he spoke quite honestly in that interview, saying, I'm a coach at heart. I am a coach inside, even though I have a different job now. That's a strength of my role, but it causes me a bit of a problem because I always want to interfere, he said, in what managers are doing. It's quite clear he was interfering in terms of what Ruben Amorim was doing. So long term, if that dynamic remains the same, he's very close with the CEO, Omar Barada, as well. How does that play out going forward when you've got a frustrated coach with a very big say?
Yeah, well, I think this boils down to a lot of sporting directors that sometimes aren't accountable for the decisions they make, bringing players in. And unfortunately, in this day and age, coaches are. They stand on the touchline and they're there. They're the ones who are getting all the heat from the fans, from the media. And ultimately, Jason Wilcox there is the man who's bringing the players in. And this isn't a Manchester United. This is across the board. And I know this at lower league as well, by the way, that happens. So a manager or a coach signs up to what he's dealt, and that's where the breakdown happened last week with Ruben Amorim, where he came out and said, I don't want to be a coach, I want to be manager of Manchester United.
I want the final say.
I want the final say in the players that comes in and the recruitment. But I think we see it in Germany where sporting directors are accountable. They come out and say, why did you sign that player? What did you see in that? Because they don't all
they go in front of the media, don't they?
Yeah, I've seen it at some of my old clubs that this happens, and when it gets wrong, sporting directors maybe get moved on, or maybe aren't accountable for their actions, and that's signing players. And it's the managers that we always speak about. But recruitment at many clubs in the Premier League hasn't been good enough, and it hasn't at Manchester United. And the proof is in the pudding, where we say Merz touches on some of those Manchester United legends. I mean, there isn't too many in this Manchester United team that get anywhere near the era of me growing up. Bruno Fernandes is a top player. I like Cunha that's been brought in. I like Mbeumo that's been brought in. And ultimately, the manager has to coach and get the best out of these players. Ruben Amorim wasn't doing that, but I think the hierarchy at Manchester United have to take an awful lot of responsibility of this as well. And the next question is, who's going to be the right manager? It's the million-dollar question, isn't it? So sometimes you get it right and sometimes you get it wrong. And I don't put all that on these, because people will go, you touched on the food and losing jobs. That's unacceptable. That's pathetic. That's really bad management from the top. Trying to get the right manager doesn't always guarantee that it's going to be right. But what they will be trying to do is what they think is the best for the football
Do
club.
you trust them, Ineos, to get it right going forward?
Well, the proof's in the pudding. It hasn't been right so far. But while they're in charge, they make the decisions and they are trying to get it right. But I think the summer is a big factor where they're waiting for a manager that is charge of maybe a national team, maybe a club, a manager in a club in this country. They're waiting till they're out of work, in my opinion.
And the thing is, Merce, it's no coincidence. You look at the teams at the top of the Premier League at the moment: Arsenal, Aston Villa, Manchester City. There are sporting directors of that club, but the three guys in charge, Arteta, Emery and Guardiola, they are boss. They're in charge. They call the shots. And no coincidence, they're sitting top of the pile. So whoever comes in the summer long term, that dynamic has to be surely on their terms.
Yeah, and the problem with that, when Sir Alex Ferguson was at the top of the game, and Man United were running the show, they were running English football, they were phenomenal. People forget he had unbelievable coaches. And he kept on changing his coaches. Do you know what I mean? It'd be a couple of years or 3 years, they'll change the coach. It was a different voice. Even though you had the manager, all we do here in this country is you just sack the manager. Sometimes players get fed up with the same voice time and time again. You know, when you're a manager of a club, you want someone like a Roy Keane who comes in and has a go at players, so you don't have to have a go at them first. Do you know what I mean? Even when I was at Arsenal with Tony Adams, he'd come in and start having a go at players. If George keeps on doing it, George Graham, and then you start thinking, oh, he's getting on my... You know, everybody forgets Sir Alex Ferguson was an unbelievable manager. He had unbelievable coaches. And even when they were successful, they still moved on and had another coach, because players get fed up with the same voice week in, week out. And that's not the case now. All we seem to do now is go, right, sack the manager and we'll start again. You know, instead of, you know, look at Pep. Pep's gone and got another coaches, another ideas, and it's just different. You know, this man, they need to get this sorted, Man United, because they're drifting further and further. And I said before, around the world it works, right, where teams like in Africa and Australia and New Zealand and China and Japan, when they're growing up as little kids, they all want to support the winning team. And whoever that winning team is, they will support that team. And that's why Man United have become the biggest club in the world, because you go to all these countries and everybody supports Man United around a certain age. These young kids now won't be supporting. They'll be supporting teams like Man City and Arsenal, teams that are winning, that, you know, are at the top of the game at the moment. And that's how you get supporters on your side. And it's a cycle, and they need to sort this out, because at the moment, biggest club in the world, or one of them, far, far from the biggest team in the world.
Only one place to start. That is talking. Did you want to not talk about Man United?
I did.
Is that what you're
I think
there?
that's probably why.
Let's come to Lias. Ruben Amorim sacked by the club after 14 months in charge. Huge news this. We're going to do an in-depth dive into Man United, talk about potential candidates. Before we do that, what are your thoughts when you heard the news?
A little surprised, because as poor as maybe results have been, I did kind of think they were going to give him till the end of the season. I wasn't really of the opinion until that big press conference before and after Leeds kind of came out, and you could feel that there was a bit of a falling out between himself and members of the board. So maybe in terms of that sense, the writing was on the wall, but honestly, I think this is probably the correct decision. I know that the fan base is a bit split down the middle in terms of should this bode worse on the board than it is on him, or vice versa. But I think when you take everything into context, the win record, the style of play, the falling out with some of the players at the time, I don't think this was really going in the direction that most of us thought it was going to go in. And ultimately, I think in hindsight, he was probably a bit fortunate he didn't get fired last season. But now, I guess the big question is, where does the club go forward with an interim and then eventually a permanent manager?
Yeah, quite good. From a sort of neutral standpoint, obviously, yes, talking as a United fan, what do you make of the whole situation, how it unfolded this week?
I think Amorim, he knew the writing was on the wall, right? And I think his press conferences have got increasingly antagonistic. But I think the timing is strange, because he could have gone after the Grimsby game. The optics weren't great. The result wasn't great. He could have gone after the Europa League final loss against Spurs. The fact that he's gone after an alleged disagreement with Jason Wilcox, I think is, I don't know. I don't know if it bodes well for the board. I don't know if it bodes well for the next permanent manager. But ultimately, it was the right decision.
You think it was the right call?
Yeah, it was the right decision. The results have been terrible. This has been the worst Man United team in the last 40, 50 years. He had to go. Yeah. But now they're in the difficult position of replacing him, and the interim manager they're bringing now, and then the permanent manager for next season.
I think that's the big question here, right? Sorry to interrupt. Like, I think, yes, it was the right decision, but do we trust the board to now make the correct decision? Because they're also the ones that hired him. They're also the ones that gave Ten Hag an extension at the time and then fired him. So really the question is, do we trust the board to make the right decision here?
Well, it looks like they're going to go for an interim manager. Before we come on to your permanent managers, let's quickly discuss that option, because we've seen Michael Carrick's name linked, we've seen Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's name linked, Darren Fletcher, who's currently in charge. What are you looking at for the next few months? And is it the right decision to go caretaker?
Yeah, I mean, I was listening to David Ornstein the other day, and he was saying he expects the managerial market to explode over the summer, and I think rightfully so. People will be out of a job. There'll be managers leaving their countries after managing the World Cup. I think it becomes a whole lot more interesting when you fast forward 6 months. So I think the correct decision is probably to go with someone for the next few months just to get us to that point. Between Ollie and Carrick, I think those are the two realistic appointments that we could go for. I'm not really fussed either way. I think both of them hold the same amount of risk as they do reward. I don't see one of them as being much more qualified for the job, but despite Ollie already being a caretaker manager here, it's a vastly different team. He won't even have his assistant coaches that he did the first time around. So honestly, I'm not too fussed either way we go. I can see pros and cons of either of them.
In terms of Manchester United though, it's an emotional football club, and we saw when Ollie got the job on an interim basis initially, Ollie's at the wheel, got the job full time, and then the writing looked like it was on the wall for Ten Hag. It looked like he was going to be sacked. You win the FA Cup, give him the job or extend his contract. So I look at Manchester United, and you can say it's an interim manager right now, but if you go on a little cheeky run in the FA Cup, if you go well in the league, there's no reason for me to believe that you won't give that manager the job full time. And that's why when you look at the options, you should go for somebody that you can see being there beyond the end of the season.
So do you think a caretaker for a short period of time is a mistake?
I think that's what they're going to do. I don't think it's a mistake, but I think if you're a Man United fan, you have to look at the history, and realistically, if you play well under this interim manager, there'll be fans who'll be calling for this manager who they already have an emotional attachment to. But this is where
you have to hope that the board can look past fan sentiment and look past emotion and make the best footballing decision, which they haven't been able to do so far.
So on that, Quakey, just quickly, you think if it is Ollie that has the caretaker role, do you think there's a chance if he does well he could end up becoming the permanent manager again?
For sure. It's Manchester United. There's a reason why these interim managers are all ex-players. There's an emotional attachment to. There's almost like an old boys club sentiment at Manchester United.
That's rich coming from it. Didn't you guys bring Lampard in as an interim at one point as well, too, after firing him the first time?
But he's doing really well at Coventry. But I just look at Manchester United and I can see them. The league is weak right now, and Man United can feasibly finish in the top four. And if you do that under Carrick or you do that under Ollie, there'll be Manchester United fans that'll be calling for that manager to stay permanently.
I won't be one of them.
Well, let's talk about the permanent position then.
Yeah.
Because we have tasked you with becoming Jason Wilcox to some level.
That is not a job I want right now, by the way.
And picking the next permanent Manchester United manager. You've got 5 candidates to bring to the table, 5 through to 1. Let's start in that 5th spot, because there's kind of 2 names you were going back and forth on. Right? And they were Ollie Glasner and
Andoni Iraola.
And you've sided with
Iraola. Let me preface this by saying this. I'm not really 100% sold on either of these guys. In fact, I think every manager that I have on this list comes with their own doubts and uncertainties, simply because at Man United there's bigger issues than the manager. But I've been tasked with a job here, so I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. I'm Wilcox in this situation. The reason I went for Iraola over Glasner is simply because I think there is a chance that Iraola's football scales higher. It scales better at a bigger club, right? When you look at how most elite football clubs or clubs that have elite aspirations want to play, it is more often than not in the Iraola fashion rather than the Glasner fashion. I think Glasner's done a fantastic job at Palace, and in fact, he's doing a better job this season than Iraola is. But I just don't know if his football can scale correctly at a Man United or at a Liverpool or at a Manchester City. Whereas Iraola, who has had his issues this season, I look when his football is really at its free-flowing best. It is an absolute joy to watch. It's very modern, in my opinion, in terms of when you're talking about the press, when you're talking about the passing out from the back, when you're talking about how high intensity it is. And I have to give him some credit as well, too. Despite the poor run of form that they were on this season, previous to beating you guys, of course.
Thanks, mate.
You have to take into consideration as well, too, that when he had his side last season, before it was decimated in the transfer window, these guys were one of the most entertaining teams in the league. They were going to the big 6 grounds and winning left, right, and center. They beat United 3-0, I think 2 seasons in a row or something like that. They were a joy to watch. So I'm not too certain on either of these guys. I think they both carry their own risks. I think Glasner's probably more set in terms of personality to manage a bigger club, but I give the edge slightly to Iraola.
Of the two, because obviously, and I agree with a lot of what you're saying in terms of on the eye, Bournemouth are a fantastic team when it works to watch. Flip side to that is Glasner's delivered major silverware at a lot of clubs. He's been at Europa League, Frankfurt, FA Cup first trophy in Crystal Palace's history for Palace. Who do you think would be a better fit for Man United out of the two?
I think Iraola would fit the model that Manchester United are going with at the moment. I think you want a manager that's malleable, a manager that isn't too disruptive, isn't too cantankerous, and I think that's more Iraola, and it's more about the X's and O's. He's a manager. Oliver Glasner's a manager, and I don't think you'll be given those reins at Manchester United, and I think he's vocal. When things don't go his way, he will be vocal about it, and I think for what Manchester United and the direction they're going in at the moment, I'll say Iraola.
Okay, stick him down at 5. Then don't forget this is going in reverse order, so we're going to culminate with who Lias wants as number 1. So this is your list, not prediction. It's what you want. And number 1 is your favourite. So let's look at your 4th pick. Who you gone with?
Again, all of these guys carry their own uncertainties, and De Zerbi, I could almost definitely see it one day ending in tears, because this is, in my opinion, one of the most volatile managers in the game. He is of the Antonio Conte mold. However, I think one thing is undeniable. This guy is an elite coach, right? When it comes to the X's and O's, when it comes to setting your team up, I think this guy's track record, the amount of people that have vouched for him as being as innovative when it comes to building out from the back, and again, playing a style of football that can just wow you, I think he's unquestionable. Like the way Guardiola has raved about this guy and said how many times he's taken inspiration in terms of his tactics, it is sensational. I think, again, the only question with De Zerbi is when is he going to just explode, right? When is he going to fall out with somebody? Even at Marseille last season, I think he threatened to quit 3 months into the job. But there is no question, when this guy can get his team clicking, they are one of the most exciting watches in football. And he's had a very successful time at Marseille as well, too. Brighton, at one point, they were everybody's favorite team outside of the top 6, playing some fantastic football. Develops players quite well as well, too.
Pretty sure he led them to the highest ever finish.
Got them to an FA Cup semi-final as well, too.
Unlucky to lose.
And that team played some some of the best football you will have seen in the league at that point.
Where do you stand on Roberto De Zerbi and the fit for Man United?
I agree with you in terms of the X's and O's, in terms of the way he gets his teams playing, one of the most exciting managers in the world, but it's personality with him as well. And we saw at Brighton, we've seen it in various jobs, that he is prone to blowing up, and that's not necessarily what Manchester United need right now. But in terms of manager that's going to get you playing, and I think Man United is an interesting football club where the results do matter, but the way you get results matters even more. He'll play the Manchester United way, whatever that is, and he will get fans off their seats. But I don't think he will be a fit.
I completely agree. I chose De Zerbi as well too, because when I look at United, I don't see it as much as when Mourinho left and we needed someone to, again, manage the group and get everyone's spirits up. I look at us having a severe coaching issue, and that's why I've also looked at managers who I think, they can elevate the coaching, the tactical level of this side, which I think he could do.
Where do you stand at the moment on this sort of sporting director to head coach to manager battle? Because you mentioned there about the manager and how well he's going to clash, and De Zerbi blowing up, and it's a big narrative at the moment, isn't it? Especially amongst Chelsea fans, Manchester United fans. This manager, even we heard Amorim as he was exiting, I came here to be the manager, not the head coach.
I find that ironic, and I find it a little hypocritical of any Man United fan to now be complaining that we have a sporting director, because this was a claim, this was something that we were crying out for years. Even under Erik ten Hag, people were saying, Erik ten Hag has too much responsibility. He shouldn't be in charge of the transfers. We need a sporting director. Guardiola has been working under Cheeky now for the last 20 years at Barcelona and City. Arteta works under sporting directors. This is modern day football. Now, there has to be a good relationship between the two of them. Like I said, Guardiola and Cheeky, they've known each other for a very long time. And clearly, there was not that between Amorim and his superiors. But I'm sorry, this is where the game is going now. So I find it a little hypocritical for anyone to complain about it now.
Okay, stick it on.
Let's go to number 3 on your list then. And this is where we start to enter World Cup territory, potentially?
I think it's where we start to enter world-class territory as well.
And this goes back to what you were saying, listening to Ornstein, about the level of manager you think will become available after the World Cup.
100%. This is my first real, everyone has uncertainties, but now I'm starting to get a little bit more certain. Julian Nagelsmann. Now, I think his reputation for some reason has been a little bit smeared since he left Bayern Munich. but I don't really understand why. His win rate there was fantastic, over 70%.
Yeah.
And people will say, oh, it's Bayern. Of course it is. But I think it's very important to take context into account here. That Bayern team was coming towards the end of their dynasty, and it showed when Tuchel came in, and they narrowly won the league the next season on the final day, and then got smoked in the league the following season against Leverkusen. And really, Company came in and has aided this rebuild of Bayern and to bring them back to the top of European football. But I think this was a Bayern team that were on the decline, and he still managed fantastic results. That's one thing. He's managed at a big club. He's got experience working in a high-pressure environment. Bayern is as big as it gets in European football. Then you look at the style of play as well, too. I think since he broke onto the scene, whether it was with Hoffenheim, then with Leipzig, now with Bayern Munich as well, too, in the German national team, he has always been known for an exciting, progressive, modern style of play. In terms of the press, he's always been known for that. The build-up, the style, the goals they score. I think this guy right here, you talk about the United style way, the United DNA. I think this is the kind of football that Man United fans would want to see.
Yeah, he's a manager you can buy into as well. He's young. Yeah. He's unconventional as well in terms of the way he goes about things. I was a little bit disappointed with Germany at the Euros, home Euros. I think.
But the only team that beat them was Spain, who ended up beating everybody.
Yeah, I think that Spain team's a little bit overrated. In honesty, yeah, definitely. I feel like England should have beaten that Spain team, and I think that Germany should have beaten that Spain team as well. But he's a good manager, and I feel like you said, you're heading to world-class territory. You've got questions about Iraola, got questions about De Zerbi, you've got a few questions about Nagelsmann.
Got a whole lot less.
He's an upper echelon manager.
My first point, though, is going to be, obviously, Nagelsmann, he's worked with Vivell before, so that's a positive. Yeah. But with the World Cup, the dates of it, Julian Nagelsmann, if he goes deep in that World Cup, potentially doesn't arrive to United until the end of July, 2-3 weeks before a Premier League season starts, missing an entire pre-season, missing an entire transfer period. The same can be said of potential managers coming up. But how does that work when United are trying to pre-plan for an entire season when they don't have a manager in charge for the whole pre-season?
I think that's something we're going to have to compromise here, because again, when you look at the quality and also the gap in quality, with all due respect to the other guys I've named here, between managers who could be available post-World Cup and managers who are available a lot earlier than the World Cup, you give and take here. For the amount of time they'd have available to train the squad in pre-season, the take here is that you're talking about bona fide winners. You're talking about prestigious managers here. So what do you kind of value more here in this situation? I think here we got to go with best in class, and I think that's the three managers I've named here.
Okay, let's go to top two then. So
there you go.
Who have you got at two, Lias?
Thomas Tuchel. And I actually think it's the most likely appointment.
Do you?
My prediction is that I think Thomas Tuchel post-World Cup will no longer be England manager. Whether that's he's lost at the tournament and maybe decided that, look, I've taken this group where I can. I only signed to the World Cup anyways. Or he wins the whole thing and he goes out a national hero and it's like, okay, I'm one and done and I'm out of here.
So whatever happens to England,
my prediction is
Thomas Tuchel will no longer be England manager.
And I would even go one step further. I think Eddie Howe will be the manager of England. So I think that's kind of where the footballing world is kind of. I think Eddie Howe by this time next year will be England manager, and I think Thomas Tuchel will be a free man. Now, if you cast your mind back to when Ineos first took over at Man United, this was Jim Ratcliffe's favorite guy. This was his guy that he wanted at the helm. He had just left Bayern Munich. Eric Ten Hag was on the ropes. He interviewed him first and foremost. And he told him, I'm looking to take a break post-management, which is eventually why we went to other candidates and then stuck with Ten Hag. But I think if Ratcliffe had his way, this would have been the Man United manager. And who knows what the situation looks like. But again, you're talking about prestige, pedigree, experience, winning. This guy ticks. This is a bona fide world-class manager. And he's shown as well, too. He can come into groups, into teams where you think it's a bit disjointed. Quick will tell you himself what he did at Chelsea is to this day for me remarkable when you look at how that club was being run at the time. I think this guy. I think he's versatile as well too. So I'm a fan of Tuchel.
Let's bring you in as a Chelsea fan. Know a lot about him. Obviously won the Champions League, the 9 major trophies as a manager. Firstly, 2 points I want to pick you up on there. Do you agree with what Lias is saying that he will no longer be England manager after the World Cup, or do you think differently?
No, I completely agree. His contract runs to the end of the World Cup. Yeah. I don't think he'll renew that contract. I think if England win the World Cup, like you say, he goes out in a blaze of glory. If England don't win the World Cup, then he hasn't done his job, he hasn't achieved his goal, and he leaves regardless. So I agree with that point for sure. I think he's a manager that has got clear intentions, clear goals, and when he achieves them, he moves on. And I look at him as a manager that would be great at Manchester United, but what he's shown an inability to do at all of his previous clubs is manage upwards. At PSG, at Borussia Dortmund, at Chelsea, falling out with the hierarchy. Yeah. And so that's the only question I have with Thomas Tuchel. I absolutely love Tommy T. I will never forget 2021, coming in midway through the season and transforming that Chelsea team that looked like they were going nowhere to champions of Europe for the second time in my history. But his ability to manage upwards is a concern. And I think that with Manchester United and how you are being run sporting directors, nobody can come in and dictate terms with Thomas Tuchel. He will dictate terms.
Yeah, but I think, and I'm not going to spend too much time on the last one because I think it's the most unrealistic one. I think Tuchel is the most realistic one. But one thing I will say, because I completely agree with you, he has a history of falling out with his superiors. But what Man United also needs as a manager, or as a coach even, is a strong-willed man. Honestly, you need somebody who can come in here and who has the character as well to tell people around him, this is what we're doing. You need to be so strong-willed to manage at a club like at this stature. And I think that's a bit where Amorim almost fell out, to be honest with you.
Amorim said that he came in to be Manchester United manager, not head coach. Is he going to come in and be Manchester United manager, or is he head coach?
That's a big question.
I think it's a question that needs answering as well. Like that role, when it was defined and we saw the announcement for Ruben Amorim, we saw the press release for Ruben Amorim, it was very much head coach, and obviously there was movement behind the scenes at that stage, wasn't there? I think whether Thomas Tuchel comes in as manager or head coach is big for Manchester United. Could you imagine him coming in as just head coach?
I think it's a valid question, and it's one that I asked David Ornstein myself when I was on a show with him the other day, and he says he thinks he can understand skepticism, of course, because guys of this stature want to come in and have a lot of power, a lot of say. But he thinks that's also a little bit overstated because, again, most clubs these days are operating with a sporting director working alongside the coach. I think there just, again, has to be a good relationship between sporting director and manager. That's a big thing here.
Okay. Yeah, think about, I think we can all agree, top manager, Thomas Tuchel. Let's go with who you want. Number one then. So this is who Lias wants as the next permanent Man United manager.
I might as well have just put Sir Alex on here as well, too. I think it's as likely as this one. I mean, there was a small report from Bild that was ultimately proven to maybe be a bit hyperbolic, but Luis Enrique potentially leaving the job in the summer. Nothing is for sure certain. They're just rumors. Some of them might not even be true, but I'm allowed to dream here, right? This is a show. Luis Enrique, I think, again, an unquestionable world-class manager, one who's shown that, again, he can also work with a sporting director, working side by side with Luis Campos at PSG. But again, when you're talking about what you want to see from a Man United side, pressing from the front, intensity, good passing movement, good play, attacking, positive.
Appreciation of midfield.
And that's something, any of these nominees I just put forward, they need to address the midfield first and foremost. and I'm talking about ball players, I'm not talking about ball winners. He's just a world-class manager, maybe even arguably the best manager in the world over the last 12, 18 months.
Can you see that happening? Obviously, the pool of Manchester United is huge, one of the biggest clubs in the world.
Yeah.
There'll be a host of names that want to go to Man United, of course they will. Yeah. But the job that he's doing now is he's managing one of the best teams in world football. He's got an amazing gig where he's at PSG. Can you see that move happening?
Yeah, I can. I actually can. His contract runs until 2027.
Yeah.
I can see it happening because Manchester United still have that pull. It's still Manchester United.
Yeah.
And so, he's a manager that has done things his own way. And I think he's definitely been validated with the job that he's done at PSG. I feel like when he won the treble at Barcelona, there was a feeling of you've got the best players in the world. You've got MSN. But the job he did at PSG with no real standout superstars has validated him as a manager. Style of play, check. Mentality, personality, check. It's whether he wants to come to Manchester United that are in flux right now. But if you can get him, he's the best option out of all those five managers.
Okay, so that's who you want, Luis Enrique. Who do you think it will be?
Honestly, Thomas Tuchel. I think Thomas Tuchel will be Man United manager at the start of next season.
Okay.
So do I.
Any thoughts on that as United fans?
Yeah, I think it's a really good list. I think Luis Enrique, obviously dream, but probably I think Thomas Tuchel as well is pretty much the perfect selection.
There we have that. Enjoyed that. There is confirmation. The board will remind you of it one more time. That is Lias's top 5 managerial picks for Manchester United. Sitting on the top of the tree, Luis Enrique is who he'd like, who he thinks is Thomas Tuchel. Enjoyed that, mate.